You're listening to Behind the Mic with AudioFile magazine. I'm Jo Reed. Kendra Winchester is with me, and it's New Year's Eve. How are you actually going to bring this year to a close, Kendra Winchester?
Well, with audiobooks, we have The Voyage Home by Pat Barker, the wonderful Pat Barker. And
Brilliant.
this is read by Kristin Atherton, who's become a quick favorite of mine this
Yeah.
year for sure.
She read Pat Barker's other two books. This is part of a trilogy, yeah?
Yes. So this is a loose trilogy. You could read any of them as a standalone if you wanted to, but they make the most sense when read in order. But this is a retelling of the fall of Troy. So we have the Silence of the Girls and the Women of Troy, which is the fall of Troy. And then this is centered around when Agamemnon returns home with Cassandra to meet his wife, Clytemnestra, which, if you have read the play, you know doesn't go well for Agamemnon.
No, it does not. And actually, I would give Clytemnestra a hand in this.
Yes, I concur. It's so
Yeah.
I was delighted to see that this was gonna be a I love myth retellings, but one of the things that I really loved about this particular book is that it's told from Ritsa, who is an air quotes common Trojan woman. She was enslaved during the Trojan War. She was a good friend of Briseis, who was the protagonist of the first two books in the series. And
Mhm.
she is now the maid to Cassandra. And Cassandra is a daughter of Priam. She's basically a princess that's now enslaved to Agamemnon. But we get this perspective from just an average, everyday Trojan woman. And I thought that was such a clever way to tell this story.
And in this telling, she's not terribly fond of Cassandra, is she?
No, not, and understandably so.
Completely.
Cassandra is not great.
And we have this, I mean, because we have this picture of being a victim, which indeed she was, but the victim can also victimize.
Yes, there's layers of privilege there that
Yeah,
Pat Barker investigates. And there were enslaved women in Troy that were just now enslaved by the Greeks. And so like for example, they were just like it's just a new master to us. And so that
right.
was a layer that was handled in the Women of Troy. And now we're looking at Ritsa in her story, and she's a middle-aged woman. She lived a life, full life before now being enslaved in Agamemnon's circles. So, one of the things I think is really great is Kristin Atherton's performance of this story because I listened to The Women of Troy and The Voyage Home back to back, and it was just phenomenal listen. I was just consumed. This performance is the right amount of serious and it has such emotional depth with Ritsa and all the feelings that she has. The PTSD that Ritsa and Cassandra have are both on full display, and that's really interrogated by the story. And Atherton just the way she's able to get into the skin of these characters and delve into their emotions is just so well done, which is why I guess it won an Earphones Award. So it makes sense.
It does. And she must know Pat Barker's writing, all the nuances of her writing, because she is such a textured writer. And she creates such brilliant characters with so much depth.
And it's like the great writing paired with a great audiobook narrator just creates this really beautiful
Yeah.
listening experience. Just as a heads up, this is talking about enslaved women, so there's a lot of discussion of sexual assault in the book, and a lot of like infant death and mortality, and a little bit of violence. It is the story of the killing of Agamemnon. Sorry if that's a spoiler. It,
But trust us, he really deserved it.
he did. No, no love
No
lost.
love
No love
lost.
lost.
No love lost at all. Can we hear a little of her now?
Yes. So this is from the beginning where Ritsa has her opening lines.
Okay. This is The Voyage Home, The Women of Troy, Book 3. It's by Pat Barker, and it's read by Kristin Atherton.
She had yellow eyes. At times, particularly by candlelight, they scarcely looked like human eyes at all. Calchas, the priest, once said they reminded him of a goat's eyes, that she had the same numbed look of a sacrifice. I never saw her like that. She reminded me of a sea eagle, a common enough bird on the coast where I grew up. The sailors call it the eagle with the sunlit eyes. And its eyes are beautiful, but it doesn't do to forget the brutal beak, the talons sharp enough to tear living flesh from bone. No, I didn't see her as a victim. But then I knew her better than most. I was her body slave, or, to use the common vulgar term slaves themselves use, her catch fart. And I hated it.
The way she just embodies the voice of Ritsa is so spot on. And I think first person narration can be really challenging, but she nails it.
Yes, and one of the things I was incredibly impressed by was I went from Briseis's perspective in The Women of Troy, and then we went to Ritz's, and they were very different. And I think that's such a skilled thing to do, to be able to create two first person narration voices that seem so authentic, but also so different.
And as you said, a perfect pairing of Pat Barker's work.
I can't wait for the next book in this series, and I hope Kristin Atherton performs that one as well.
I hope so too. That is The Voyage Home, The Women of Troy, Book 3. It's by Pat Barker, and it's read by Kristin Atherton. Kendra, thank you so much, and the happiest of New Year's to you.
You too.
Thank you. Brilliance Publishing proudly presents today's episode of Behind the Mic. I'm Jo Reed. I'll talk to you tomorrow.